We usually think of a deep space escape as this scenario defined by, just constant, breathless momentum.
Right, just pure adrenaline.
Exactly. You jump to a new system, you immediately check your scanners for pursuit, you count your remaining ammo, and you just keep running.
Because hypervigilance becomes your baseline reality.
Yeah, you don't sleep, you just sit there waiting for the next disaster to happen. But today, we're diving into a stack of tabletop role-playing game transcripts and campaign logs that completely subvert that expectation.
They really do. It's a total shift.
We are looking at the source material for Session 5 of this overarching spacefaring campaign. And in this particular session, the engines finally power down.
Which is such a deliberate shift in pacing. Storytelling in any medium, but particularly in these long-form role-playing campaigns, it just can't sustain peak adrenaline indefinitely.
No, people would just burn out.
Exactly. The players themselves burn out. The tension just becomes white noise after a while.
So what we are analyzing today is the anatomy of a breather session.
Yeah, the classic anime festival episode trope, basically.
Right. It's a structural tool used to transition characters from being this desperate, fractured group of fugitives merely surviving together into an actual cohesive, bonded unit.
And the context here is really vital for you, the listener, to understand just how fractured they were before this.
Oh, they were a mess. Up until this point, the crew has been relentlessly hunted by that shadowy multi-system organization, the Panopticon conspiracy.
They've endured ship-to-ship combat, their resources are dwindling, and there's just this constant heavy paranoia.
They really haven't had a single moment to actually look at each other and figure out who they are when they aren't, actively fighting for their lives.
But this session takes them to a planet called Condial, and it forces them to figure out exactly that.
It's like that moment on a road trip where the car finally stops breaking down and you actually have to look at the other passengers and decide if you even like hanging out with them.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
But we should be careful not to mistake a pause in combat for a pause in character development.
Oh, definitely not.
In fact, I'd argue that more pivotal group dynamics are forged in these quiet, low-stakes moments than in the middle of a massive firefight.
Because when survival is a full-time job, there is literally no room for personality.
Right. Once that immediate threat of death is removed, the psychological architecture of the crew is finally laid bare.
So let's look at how they arrive. Because, man, their psychological architecture is definitely still stuck in survival mode.
Oh, 100%.
They drop out of their hyperspace, jump into the Condal system, and instead of heading straight to the planet's surface to dock and rest, which is what you'd expect, Ruki, the ship's pilot, executes this wild maneuver to skim a local gas giant.
Which is not a leisurely activity at all.
Not at all. They spend an entire day in the upper atmosphere manually processing fuel to fill their ship's 151-ton capacity.
The mechanics of that decision are just fascinating. In the physics of this universe, dipping into the gravity well of a gas giant to scoop unrefined fuel is turbulent, it's highly dangerous, and it requires intense manual piloting.
Yeah, you can't just put it on autopilot.
Exactly. Yet they choose to do this for a full day rather than just buy fuel immediately upon landing. It signals this deep, lingering mistrust of their environment.
They want their tanks completely full so that if they land and discover it's a trap, they can jump right out of the system without having to ask for permission.
They're keeping one foot out the door.
It's such an incredible translation of player paranoia into character action. And honestly, looking at the planetary data for Condyle from orbit, their hesitation is pretty justified.
The surface is incredibly bleak.
Yeah, the campaign notes describe it as this hostile landscape hidden beneath dense, churning clouds. There are raging electrical storms, and you can see the distant glow of volcanic activity illuminating the ash from below.
It's decidedly not a vacation destination.
Definitely not. So this environmental hostility is the defining factor of everything we are about to discuss.
Because the surface is so profoundly inhospitable, the entire civilization is forced inward. They basically had to burrow underground to survive.
Right, so the ship is guided by automated systems through this massive pressure door built directly into the side of a mountain.
Very cinematic.
Totally. They fly down this pressurized flight tunnel and finally land at what the Game Master describes as a modest Type E starport.
And for those unfamiliar with the logistics of this setting, a Type E starport is essentially the bare minimum.
Yeah, it's not some sprawling commercial hub with luxury lounges. It's practically just a beacon, a paved landing pad, and some very basic refueling infrastructure.
And the moment they step off the ship, the physical reality of Condyle hits them instantly.
The gravity.
Yes, the gravity is heavy. It's 1.2 G.
which doesn't sound like a lot on paper, but
But it means every movement requires 20% more effort. A 100-pound crate now feels like 120 pounds.
your cardiovascular system has to work harder just to circulate blood.
Exactly. And if we look at the biological implications, this environmental pressure fundamentally shapes the physiology of the local population, a species known as the Vex.
The source material describes them as somewhat short and stout, kind of like hobbits.
Right. Their spines are compressed by evolutionary necessity, and their bone density is higher to withstand that constant downward pull.
So the environment dictates the biology, and in turn, the biology dictates the culture.
And the culture is where the narrative really hooks you.
Oh, absolutely. The starport entry procedures are this perfect encapsulation of Vex priorities.
It's so telling.
The Port Authority contacts the ship, and they are intensely, almost aggressively focused on biological hazards.
They want detailed reports on atmospheric contaminants, unsecured artificial organisms.
They are completely obsessed with the integrity of the ship's air scrubbers, but then, almost as a footnote, they mention that declaring weapons is optional.
Which is a detail that often confuses players and readers alike who expect, a standard sci-fi security checkpoint.
I was confused by it. I was like, how does a civilization shrug at a group of heavily armed off-world mercenaries walking in with laser pistols, but completely panic over an outdated air filter?
You have to analyze it through the sociology of a closed system habitat.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, the Vex live entirely in these subterranean pressurized bubbles, right? In that environment, kinetic violence is a localized problem.
I see.
If a mercenary fires a stray blaster bolt in a local tavern, they might kill one person, or maybe scorch a non-essential bulkhead. The damage is contained.
But a compromised air seal.
Exactly. A compromised air seal or a virulent biological contaminant introduced into the shared ventilation system. That is an existential threat.
A microscopic pathogen could wipe out the whole city.
It could asphyxiate or infect an entire subterranean city in a matter of hours.
Oh.
So they're policing the macro-level threats, not the micro-level ones.
To the Vex, air is life. An armed mercenary is just a nuisance. A faulty respirator is a weapon of mass destruction.
And this obsession with air quality, shared breathing space, and environmental seals forms the philosophical backbone of their entire society.
That reframes everything. So while the crew is processing this weird cultural quirk, they intercept some local radio traffic and realize they've landed right in the middle of a massive communal event.
The Return of Breath Festival.
Right. And before they can even get their bearings, they are approached by Tulla. She is this highly efficient, pragmatic Vex administrator.
She is essentially the ultimate overworked event coordinator, armed with a clipboard and a problem to solve.
And she offers them a deeply practical economic proposition. She explains that one of their local districts, the Copper Ward, had a team that got delayed by a storm and cannot make it to the festival.
So she needs a replacement team.
Yeah, she looks at this rugged, capable group of off-worlders and says, look, if you agree to represent the Copper Ward in the festival competitions, the port will waive your 500 credit per day docking fee.
It is such an elegant way for the game master to hook the players.
Okay.
It appeals directly to their mechanical need to save resources.
Because they are basically broke.
Exactly. But narratively, it accomplishes something much more profound.
The moment they accept this deal and put on the copper-colored scarves and jackets provided by Tala, they undergo a shift in identity.
Yes. They are instantly assimilated into the local community structure.
They are no longer faceless drifters or paranoid fugitives hiding in a corner. They are officially the Copper Stars.
They have a public designation now. They essentially get drafted into a local intramural sports league.
And you can't have a sports league without a rival team.
Of course not.
The crew's opposition arrives, representing a different ward, and they are a group of Varg.
And for context, Varg are an anthropomorphic, canine-like alien species with very distinct pack hierarchies.
We see a trio introduced here. There is Rask, the confident, boastful alpha who leads the pack. There is Kiki, who is described as this small, hyper-agile speedster. And Garoon, a massive, imposing individual who serves as their chef.
They walk right up to the crew and initiate this classic boastful challenge.
But it feels entirely different from the encounters the crew is used to.
That difference is crucial. Let's interrogate the stakes here.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Up until this session, every rival or enemy the crew has interacted with, bounty hunters, corporate enforcers, Panopticon agents, has operated with lethal intent.
The stakes were always life, death, or capture.
Right. But this rivalry with the Vargur is distinctly non-lethal. It is competitive, it is arrogant, sure, but it is bounded by the rules of a game.
Rask wants to humiliate the crew athletically to assert dominance, but he does not want to murder them.
And that lack of lethal pressure is the key that finally unlocks these characters. Because the threat of death is removed, the defensive walls finally come down.
So before the actual festival games begin, the Game Master allows for a long stretch of downtime. We get to explore the social pillars of the crew.
They scatter into the local market, wearing their copper ward colors, and immediately start attracting the attention of the local children.
The presence of children in a narrative often serves as this mirror for the protagonist's hidden traits.
Absolutely. We see Sakura, who up until now has been characterized by her intense focus on survival, logistics, and trade, take a group of younger Vex children under her wing.
She buys them treats, she navigates the festival with them, she treats them with genuine respect and patience.
Which reveals a nurturing capacity that combat scenarios completely suppress. You don't see that when she's managing inventory during a firefight.
Meanwhile, Ruki the pilot ends up being trailed by an adolescent named Oro. Oro clearly idolizes the whole dangerous space rogue aesthetic.
He wants to hear incredible, explosive pirate stories.
And Ruki, leaning into his natural charisma, happily feeds this kid absolute exaggerated fiction about his daring exploits across the galaxy.
It's a very humorous interaction, but it also places Ruki in the role of a storyteller and a mentor figure.
He's not just the guy pulling the levers in the cockpit anymore.
No, he's engaging with the world. But perhaps the most analytically dense interaction during this downtime happens with Leonardo.
Oh man, this scene really stood out in the transcripts.
Leonardo is the crew's espionage and infiltration specialist. His entire worldview is built on paranoia, leverage, and operational security.
Right, he doesn't trust anyone.
And he is being followed around the festival by a young local girl named Nemi, who is deeply suspicious of off-worlders. But while he is dealing with this skeptical child, he has a quiet, pivotal interaction with his companion.
This is the intelligence asset the crew rescued from a secure facility in previous sessions, right?
Yes. The companion approaches Leonardo with two very specific requests. He asks for his physical identification documents back, and he explicitly demands that Leonardo stop rifling through his personal belongings.
He is setting a hard boundary.
Now consider the mechanics of Leonardo's character. His default state is to gather intelligence, to monitor everything, and to maintain absolute control over all variables.
So when the companion sets this boundary, we have to ask, what does Leonardo's compliance actually signify?
Because he just agrees to it.
Yeah, he hands the ID back and agrees to stop searching. I thought it was this beautiful moment of him finally showing trust, taking off his own armor, so to speak.
See, I look at it slightly differently. Is it purely altruistic trust, or is it a calculated realization that providing the illusion of autonomy is a cheaper form of control?
Oh, wow. That's a darker take.
Well, up until this point, the companion was a puzzle piece, an objective to be managed. By granting this boundary, Leonardo might just be acknowledging that treating this asset as a human being yields better cooperation than treating him as a prisoner.
That makes a lot of sense. Either way, though, whether it's genuine emotional growth or just advanced manipulation, it is a profound shift in how Leonardo interacts with his environment.
He's choosing a path other than brute force surveillance.
And almost immediately after making that heavy, character-defining choice, Leonardo turns around and pranks Nemi, the kid who has been trailing him.
The tonal shift there is classic tabletop gaming.
It really is. He utilizes his elite stealth skills to slip behind her while she is holding an ice cream cone made of some frozen local root paste and causes her to trip backward right into it.
The whiplash between heavy emotional boundary setting and petty physical comedy is just a staple of the medium. It humanizes a character who could otherwise become way too brooding.
And the prank resolves well because Nemi immediately forgives him once she realizes she still gets to eat the ice cream off her face, basically.
She even goes on to write a highly fabricated, glowing safety report about Leonardo to the festival officials.
It demonstrates that Leonardo is actually capable of playful, non-lethal connection.
Which is a huge step for him.
So while Leonardo is dealing with children, Sakura is proving her worth in a completely different arena. She is approached by a Vex trade coordinator named Alan Varr.
The notes describe him as looking like a deeply stressed, overworked bureaucrat.
He asks Sakura to review an off-world sales agreement for a shipment of ceramic air filters.
This sequence brilliantly highlights how diverse a functional crew's skill sets must be. In a tabletop game, it's so easy to over-index on combat skills.
Everyone just wants to shoot things.
Exactly. But Sakura utilizes her background in administration and trade law. She reviews the contract and immediately identifies the structural traps.
It is entirely predatory against the Vex.
Let's break down the mechanics of the contract because it's pretty insidious. The buyers structured the agreement so that the Vex are liable for all shipping losses across interplanetary space.
Which is insane.
It is. Furthermore, the Vex are burdened with the currency conversion fees, and any arbitration regarding disputes must happen on a distant core world planet.
A planet the Vex could never afford to travel to.
Exactly. It is designed to bleed them dry through legal technicalities.
It's the ultimate corporate shakedown, but Sakura completely dismantles it. Using her persuasion and broker skills, she rolls against the difficulty of the contract and succeeds massively.
She renegotiates the terms, shifting the liability away from the Vex entirely.
She earns a direct commission of 10 dozen credits for her consulting work, which they badly need. But most importantly, she secures highly favorable future trading terms for her own crew.
The strategic value of that cannot be overstated. By navigating this bureaucratic encounter, Sakura just secured a reliable, economically friendly port for the crew.
In a galaxy where they are hunted by the Panopticon, having a safe harbor where they hold political and economic leverage is a massive victory.
She essentially fights a boardroom battle and wins, proving that logistical acumen is just as vital to survival as a plasma rifle.
It is a massive win for the group. Ruki, on the other hand, engages in his own diplomatic mission, and it goes catastrophically wrong.
It's a masterclass in how a crew's survival instincts do not translate to civilized society.
Ruki operates as a blunt instrument, and we see exactly what happens when a blunt instrument is applied to a delicate social situation.
Right, he reunites with senior scout Snickerbottoms, who is an old trainee of his, currently conducting a 50-year planetary survey.
Snickerbottoms asks Ruki to leverage his experience to help interview a stubborn Vex family who is refusing to participate in the census.
The context for the family's refusal is really important here. They felt they were misrepresented in the previous survey half a century ago, which led to some serious economic disadvantages for them.
They are deeply historically distrustful of off-world surveyors.
And Snickerbottoms believes Ruki's presence as an older, respected figure might, smooth the tension.
But Ruki has basically no points invested in diplomacy.
0.
He walks up, knocks on the door, and the Vex grandfather immediately tells him to leave. And instead of de-escalating, Ruki physically puts his foot in the door and shoves it open to force the conversation.
It is a phenomenal miscalculation of the social physics of the moment.
It's like trying to negotiate a peace treaty by detonating an explosive. You just cannot force compliance like that.
And naturally, it backfired.
Oh, instantly. The Vex matriarch, Martha, hears the commotion, steps around the corner, and levels a shotgun directly at Ruki's chest.
Snickerbottoms has to furiously apologize and physically drag Ruki away before they both get their heads blown off.
Mechanically and narratively, this is a perfect intersection.
It really is. Ruki is brilliant at navigating the physical dangers of space, flying through asteroid fields, and boasting in taverns. But when a situation requires nuance, empathy, and tact,
his default setting physical force just fails spectacularly.
It establishes his limitations in a highly memorable way, reminding the players that every skill set has its blind spots.
So after all these chaotic side quests, the crew regroups, and the festival games officially commence. The first event is the Environmental Maintenance Challenge.
The stakes here are high for the Vex, but low for survival.
Right. The teams are ushered into a chamber, handed a chaotic mess of hoses, air seals, and filter cartridges, and instructed to find and repair the faults faster than the opposing teams.
This represents a classic group skill challenge. It requires a synthesis of dexterity to handle the parts, engineering knowledge to understand the systems, and raw intelligence to diagnose the faults quickly.
And it generates one of the most intense, emotionally resonant, dramatic moments of the entire deep dive.
It's a brilliant bit of roleplay.
Ruki, trying to optimize their efficiency, deploys a small, automated scout drone to scan the gear for microfractures. Now, the context here is that several sessions ago, Sakura was involved in a brutal, near-lethal encounter with a hostile, weaponized drone.
So when Ruki's scanning drone buzzes into the air in this enclosed room,
Sakura genuinely panics.
This is where the mechanics of a tabletop role-playing game elevate into a profound storytelling engine.
I find this part so fascinating.
We have to look at how trauma is handled mechanically. The player controlling Sakura actively chooses to have her character suffer a PTSD flashback.
She doesn't have to do that.
No, she volunteers for it. The player physically steps back from the table. More importantly, She voluntarily accepts a mechanical penalty to her dice roll, a negative modifier, because her character is distracted, hyperventilating, and terrified by the sound of the rotors.
Why would a player actively choose to make it harder to win the game?
Because the goal isn't just to win. The goal is to tell a compelling story. By accepting that penalty, the player grounds Sakura's trauma in the reality of the game world.
It ceases to be just a piece of backstory written on a character sheet.
Exactly. It becomes a tangible obstacle in the present moment. Sakura has to actively push through that lingering fear, forcing her focus back onto the hoses in her hands to actually contribute to the team effort.
And because she manages to push through that penalty and succeed anyway, the victory is so much sweeter. The team manages to win the event by a razor-thin margin, beating the Vargur and securing their very first breath mark, which is this small wooden token signifying victory.
Action in the face of fear is the essence of bravery, and her ability to overcome that panic earns the begrudging, visible respect of Rask and the Varg team.
This perfectly sets up the second event, the cooking contest. This is essentially Iron Chef Conduel.
The prompt the judges provide is incredibly thoughtful.
It is. The teams are told to create a dish that represents the place you return to after danger. So the theme they are cooking to is the concept of home.
Which carries immense dramatic irony for this specific crew. Aside from the metallic hull of their ship, they do not possess a home.
They are actively fleeing the concept of a static home to avoid the Panopticon.
Right. So they examine the ingredients provided by the festival, and it is this bizarre alien pantry of subterranean flora and fauna.
The Game Master lists fermented protein curd, smoked root paste, a dense geothermal flatbread dough, peppery cave vegetables, highly acidic mineral candies, and a savory broth concentrate.
It's a culinary puzzle.
The synergy the crew demonstrates here is remarkable. They don't just guess at flavor profiles, they actually apply their specific character proficiencies.
Milt, the crew's engineer and scientist, uses his knowledge of chemistry to analyze the molecular makeup of the ingredients.
He categorizes which ones are highly acidic, which are alkaline, and how they will react under heat.
This scientific foundation allows Sakura and Ruki to collaborate on the actual preparation without, causing a chemical disaster.
They decide to create a dish they dub the off-world curry bomb. They utilize the savory broth and the peppery cave vegetables to form a rich, dense curry, which they serve alongside the baked geothermal flatbread.
But the stroke of genius is how they use the mineral candies.
Because Milt identified them as highly acidic and reactive, they use them as a garnish over the protein curd. They essentially behave like pop rocks, fizzing and popping on the palate.
Sakura takes charge of the plating and the presentation to the judges. She rolls exceptionally high on her persuasion check, framing the dish with a compelling narrative.
She explains that it is a meal made from the earth, robust, grounding, and savory, but with a surprising explosive fizz that represents the unpredictability and danger of space travel.
It perfectly encapsulates their unique definition of home.
The judges are absolutely captivated, and the copper stars secure 2 more breath marks. But the real insight in the scene comes from analyzing why the Varg team fails so spectacularly.
Because Garoon, the massive Varg chef, creates a delicate, fluffy, visually stunning pastry. It looks like a culinary masterpiece.
But when the human and Vex judges taste it, they are repulsed.
The underlying architecture of this failure is brilliant.
The text notes that to human and Vex taste buds, the flavor profile Garoon constructed tastes exactly like emergency industrialized scout rations. It tastes like cardboard and chemical preservatives.
This raises a vital question about subjective reality in science fiction. Why would a masterpiece taste like cardboard?
We have to examine the biology.
Exactly. Varg, as an anthropomorphic canine species, possess vastly different olfactory and gustatory receptors compared to humans or the Vex. Their sensory processing prioritizes completely different chemical compounds.
So a flavor that is incredibly complex and nuanced to a Varg might not even register on a human tongue.
That's it. Furthermore, to achieve that fluffy, delicate texture in a high-gravity environment like Condiol, Garoon likely had to use specific chemical stabilizers from the provided ingredients.
Oh, that makes sense.
To his alien palate, those stabilizers might be tasteless or even pleasant. But to the human and Vex judges, those specific chemicals perfectly mimic the artificial preservatives found in cheap emergency space rations.
It is a profound cultural and biological mismatch, translated seamlessly into a game mechanic. Garoon failed to consider the biological reality of his audience.
And he is absolutely devastated. insisting it's a masterpiece. But the judges rule in favor of the Copper Stars.
So, as the day transitions into evening, the festival moves into its next phase, the communal feast and the seal song showdown.
The sociological purpose of communal singing cannot be ignored here. Every culture has a mechanism for encoding history and passing down mythology.
For the Vex, living in enclosed echoing chambers, it is through song.
Right.
The local kids who have been following the crew all day hand them a lyric sheet, but it functions essentially like a game of Mad Libs. The structural rhythm is there, but the crew has to fill in the blanks with highly specific details about their ship and their lives.
And the lyrics they choose are incredibly revealing.
What do they choose to encode in their mythology? They sing about having an old ship with a brand new crew. They highlight their tight air seals, pandering perfectly to the Vex crowd. But they openly complain about the shaking, groaning engines that plague their travels.
They even throw in a line blaming Commander Virak, their original, somewhat marginalized captain, for all their daily troubles.
But the crowning jewel of the song is a line specifically bragging about the fact that they have no missiles aboard.
Which is factually accurate to their ship's loadout. But in a galaxy defined by piracy and the looming threat of the Panopticon, bragging about being unarmed is a very strange flex.
It really is. The performance itself is far from graceful. The notes describe it as a chaotic, unharmonious, foot-stomping pub shanty.
It's loud, it's aggressive, and it's deeply authentic.
The Vex audience absolutely loves the raw energy of it, and the Copper Stars are awarded the Loudest Breath Award.
Beyond the humor of the performance, what they have done is monumental for their group dynamic. By singing this song together in a public forum, they have codified their identity.
They have spoken into existence who they are.
Exactly. They are no longer a random assortment of panicked individuals. They are definitively the crew of that specific, complaining, missile-less ship. The song binds them.
The after-party following the feast is predictably pretty messy. Ruki and Snickerbottoms hit the local tavern and consume vast quantities of local spirits.
And as the tension has been building all day, Ruki inevitably ends up in a fistfight with Rask, the Varg Alpha.
It is the natural culmination of their athletic posturing, but Ruki is severely intoxicated. The game mechanics enforce a penalty to his combat rolls to reflect his inebriation.
Despite this mechanical disadvantage, though, Ruki manages to land a devastatingly lucky punch and knocks the massive Varg out cold.
Which paradoxically cements their mutual respect.
Once again, because the stakes are non-lethal, physical combat serves as a form of communication rather than destruction. Rask wakes up with a bruised jaw, but he views Ruki not as an enemy, but as a worthy peer.
Ruki definitely pays the price the next morning, though. The campaign notes detail brutal hangover mechanics that apply penalties to almost every action he attempts the next day.
And the timing couldn't be worse.
No, because the morning brings the final, most dangerous event of the festival, the relay race.
This serves as the climax of the session. The Vex do not utilize a standard athletic track. The course is set inside an abandoned, failing subterranean habitat.
The environment itself is the antagonist.
Yes.
The teams are handed a fragile, glowing orb called the Bulb of Breath. It's constructed of thin glass and filled with a luminescent vapor. They have to pass it like a baton through this hazard course.
The imagery is wildly cinematic.
They're navigating a maze of rusting maintenance gantries, sealed pressure chambers, and exposed conduits, with amber safety lights pulsing through the dust.
And the mechanics of the game translate this sequence into pure action movie momentum. First, the crew encounters a sealed blast door, simulating a pressure regulator failure.
Milt, relying on his engineering expertise, doesn't hesitate. He diagnoses the fault, manually bypasses the locking mechanism, and forces the door open, maintaining their pace.
Then they encounter a massive 12-foot gap where a steel gantry has completely collapsed into the dark.
And Leonardo realizes that the gravity plating in this specific sector of the ruined habitat is fluctuating and failing. He uses the pockets of low gravity to physically jump to the ceiling, attach his magnetic boots, grab his crewmates one by one, and swing them across the gap while hanging upside down.
It's a wildly dangerous maneuver. He has to spend several limited points of luck, a vital resource in this game system, to pull it off. But it keeps them neck and neck with the Varg team.
But all of this cinematic action, all the expended resources and brilliant rolls, merely serves to set up the ultimate moral choice at the end of the race.
Exactly.
The crew approaches the final door. The finish line is glowing right on the other side. But as they arrive, they see Kiki, the Varga speedster.
Her safety tether has become tangled and caught in the gears of a massive moving gantry support.
The amber safety lights in the chamber suddenly flash to red, accompanied by a blaring siren. Kiki is dangling over a drop, struggling to breathe as her suit's airline is pinched, completely trapped.
We must evaluate the context of the player's knowledge here. The crew knows this is a simulated environment designed for a festival game.
Right.
However, the flashing red lights and sirens indicate a systemic failure that has escalated beyond the parameters of the game.
But the other non-player character teams, including Kiki's own teammates who are further ahead on the track, assume the siren is just another simulated obstacle.
They ignore her, running right past to cross the finish line and claim the victory.
So the Copper Stars are presented with a binary choice. They can ignore her, step over the finish line, and win the festival, or they can stop.
And without a moment of hesitation, they abandon the race.
They carefully place the fragile bulb of breath on the floor, and the entire crew physically strains to pry the heavy, grinding gears of the gantry off her safety line, ultimately pulling her down to the deck.
This is the defining thematic moment of the entire deep dive. The crew's instinct, honed by weeks of ruthless survival and fleeing the Panopticon, has fundamentally shifted.
They prioritize the preservation of life over their own glory or objective.
It proves that despite their rough edges, their deep-seated paranoia, and their occasional mercenary actions, they possess an incorruptible moral compass. They chose empathy when it was most inconvenient.
And that choice leads us directly into the aftermath, the award ceremony. Because the Copper Stars stop to pry the gantry open, they lose the race.
The Varg team crosses the line first and is awarded the overall Copper Seal for athletic victory. But then, the administrators introduce a twist.
The Vex officials step forward. They observe the entire race, including the systemic failure, on the habitat's internal monitors.
They award the Copper Stars a special, highly revered commendation, the Shared Air Seal for outstanding sportsmanship.
The head administrator essentially addresses the crowd and says, "You prioritized a life over a game. In our closed system, where every breath of air is shared by every citizen, there is no higher virtue than protecting your neighbor."
It is a total narrative validation of the crew's moral choice. And in the tradition of tabletop gaming, it pays off in highly tangible mechanical rewards.
Rask, the Varg Alpha, who was already impressed by Ruki's combat prowess the night before, is profoundly humbled by the fact that they sacrificed their victory to save his packmate.
He approaches the crew and offers them full access to a high-tech Varg shipyard operating in the system, promising that his team will personally help them repair their lingering critical engine issues.
Which they desperately need, considering they've been complaining about those engines in song.
Milt also receives a hilarious accolade from the Vex engineers, a questionable engineering citation.
The local technicians were equally horrified and amazed by how he bypassed their safety regulators during the race. It's essentially a formal award for being an effective mad scientist.
Beyond the trophies and the humor, let's tally what the crew actually secured during this breather. Their fuel tanks are completely topped off. They have secured replacement parts and expert labor for their ship.
They have forged valuable, reliable diplomatic contacts in Senior Scout Snickerbottoms, the Varg Pack, and the Vex Trade Cooperative.
They are in a vastly superior position, both structurally and socially, than when they skimmed that gas giant in a state of sheer panic.
But the true reward, the emotional payoff of the session, occurs in a final, quiet character moment back on their ship.
The festival has concluded. The crew is exhausted, sleeping off hangovers, bruises, and adrenaline.
Commander Vierek, the original captain who has been increasingly sidelined and marginalized as the crew's organic dynamic took over, is alone in the ship's break room. He accesses the ship's internal entertainment system and discovers the recording of the messy, chaotic, embarrassing seal song they performed at the feast.
Vierek is characterized as a man of order and strict protocol. He views this loud, rebellious, unharmonious pub shanty as a severe breach of discipline.
It does not align with his vision of a tight, military-style operation.
Exactly. So he highlights the file, and he hits the delete button to erase it from the ship's memory.
But the computer pings, flashing an error, and denies his request. A text prompt appears on the screen stating that the audio file cannot be deleted because the system has automatically categorized and protected it as a crew cultural record.
The symbolism here is just staggering. The ship's artificial intelligence, its core operating system, has objectively recognized a shift in the crew's hierarchy.
The ship itself has processed the data and realized that Commander Virak is a relic of the past.
This messy, loud, fiercely loyal group of misfits, the ones who sing off-key about having no missiles and tight air seals, they are the true crew now. The ship has accepted their mythology.
The transition is complete. They have finally stopped being mere passengers on someone else's vessel.
When we evaluate the entirety of this session, think about what that means for how we approach narrative pacing, or even how we manage teams in our own lives.
We often operate under the delusion that the only way to survive a crisis is constant forward motion. We think we just have to keep our heads down and push through.
But sometimes you absolutely have to stop running. You have to park the ship, get out, and actively figure out who you were running with.
This single breather episode, revolving around cooking contests and plumbing repairs, did more to solidify this team's combat effectiveness and loyalty than a dozen intense space battles ever could.
They transitioned from paranoid fugitives into a bonded, cohesive family unit. They established a foundation of trust, they articulated their shared values, and they codified their identity.
Because of this downtime, when the high-stakes lethal threats inevitably return, the emotional weight of those encounters will be exponentially higher.
They now have something precious to lose. They are ready for whatever the universe throws at them next.
But, and here's where I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. Consider the mechanics of what they just accomplished.
For weeks, they operated as ghosts. They maintained absolute radio silence, hiding in the shadows to evade the massive, terrifying reach of the Panopticon conspiracy.
But here on Condil, they completely let their guard down. They registered under public team names. Sakura negotiated legally binding trade contracts using their identifiable credentials.
Ruki caused a public scene with a shotgun.
And they literally recorded a highly specific, broadcasted cultural footprint, a song detailing the exact quirks, engine groans, and weapon deficits of their specific ship, and presented it to an entire city.
They essentially built a massive, glowing neon sign pointing directly to their location.
They absolutely did. So as you reflect on the brilliance of this festival episode and the beautiful bonds they formed, ask yourself this. Now that the crew has finally found their footing, stopped acting like prey, and left a massive, loud, public trail of data on Condile,
How long will it take for the Panopticon conspiracy, the very hunters they were hiding from, to follow that exact trail straight to their doorstep?
the breather has served its purpose, but the hunt is undoubtedly back on. Until next time, keep your air seals tight, and maybe keep your identifying pub shanties to yourself.